OP12 is right around the corner in its Western release, so we are going to start going ahead and building the hype up to its release next Friday. So in this video, we are going to go over the 6 leaders that are going to be in the new set and seeing what they might do for the format going forwards. My name's Ben Fitzpatrick, I'm a TCG caster. That just means I love talking about them. So let's do that right now. But before we go ahead and talk about the leaders that will be joining the game next Friday with OP12, if you do enjoy this video, please do go ahead and drop a like rating on it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, as I know over 90% of people that watch these videos are not subscribed. Speaking of subscribers though, literally just before I've started to go ahead and record this video, we have reached the 150 subscriber mark. Thank you all so much for the support. Another milestone in the bag, and just as I mentioned here on my socials, here's to 500 plus, hopefully by the end of the year. Fingers crossed. Your support helps me continue to do these videos and hopefully do these more often and a little bit more full time as well. While you're down there as well, check out my link tree to find the link to my X account, as well as things like my TikTok and my Twitch, which I'm really interested in, hoping to get underway very soon and very shortly. I'm just trying to figure out kind of what the right things to stream are, how to be able to stream like properly as well. I want to try and get like a second monitor and maybe upgrade my microphone setup and camera and stuff as well. So drop a comment down below with some equipment recommendations, some things like that, and some other ideas and recommendations of some things that you'd like to see during this channel as well. So, OP12 is coming out next week, and obviously we're still in the midst of expecting a ban list to be dropping potentially this weekend. Seems to be now the predominant theme. One Piece Day has come and gone with no updates about ban and restricted list contents, so it's more than likely going to be this weekend during the Kyoto Championship Series. Whether that hits any of these leaders in any capacity, we're honestly not sure. All we know is that we have these leaders that will be coming into the game next week. So let's not waste any more time and start things off with the red leader, Silver's Rayleigh. 5,000 power, 5 life leader in mono red, which has the following effects. Under the rules of this game, you cannot include cards with a cost of 5 or more in your deck. So that, first and foremost, importantly, means characters, stages, and event cards. You cannot include anything with a cost of 5 or higher in your deck as per the rules for Rayleigh. It then has the effect activate main once per turn. You may reveal 2 events from your hand. Up to one of your characters with 4,000 base power or less gains plus 2,000 power during this turn. So what we're looking at here is a little bit of a hybrid, really, between what Mono Red Zoro used to be towards the back end of the OP05, OP06 sort of metas, with the low 1 cost, 3 cost, 4 cost characters and being quite aggressive, and with what Mono Red Ace tries to be, with quite an event-heavy strategy, while revealing 2 of those events to give one of our base 4,000 power or less characters a 2,000 powers boost for the entire turn. Silver's Rayleigh, from what I'm seeing in the Japanese format at the moment, has been really strong and is definitely one of the leaders that a lot of people feels like they have their eyes on. Got a couple of cool super rares that will be coming into the game to help support this deck, namely the 4-cost Monkey D. Luffy, and we'll be looking into the super rares in a couple of days' time in a new video as well. So make sure that you're subscribed so that you do not miss that video, as well as, of course, a box opening on release day for OP12. We will definitely be making that happen. But Rayleigh is definitely a deck that, I'll admit, when this card first got revealed, I looked at this and went, that's trash. That's really, really bad. That there was so much that you had to try and do to make the leader work. The not being able to include cards of cost 5 or more means that you're not getting things like Honesty Impact. You're not allowing yourself access to those big finishers like 8 cost Rayleigh, like 8 cost Dragon. You don't get the opportunity to run 10 cost Roger for the memes if you want to either. It's specifically Weenie Rush plus a little bit of event support. But it's been a perfect example of don't judge a book by its cover, and Silver's Rayleigh looks very, very strong, at least in the Japanese format in terms of its representation conversion rate. Whether that's going to transpire here as well in the West, we'll have to wait and see. A big thing that we'll have to wait for here is predominantly what happens in the ban list. If anything in Bello Betty gets hit, for example, or if Betty herself just gets hit entirely as a leader, Silver's Rayleigh could really, really shine as its replacement in being that aggressive deck. Yes, you've still got things like Mono Red Zoro that's still quite aggressive with its animal package. You've also got Mono Red Sanji as well as an aggro option. But Silver's Rayleigh has been putting up some decent results in Japan, so hopefully that will transfer over here into the West. And before we go on to our next leader here as well, I've got to quickly mention about the alt artwork that is for all 6 of these leaders in OP12. I think Bandai has hit it out of the park with these art styles. They're absolutely amazing. Having the mentor and having the protege in the artworks together is a big, big thumbs up from me. Next up, let's talk about one of the most feared and one of the most expected leaders to be doing well in OP12 if it doesn't get hit in any capacity this weekend. Mono Green Roronoa Zoro, a 5 life, 5000 power base leader, which has the effect Don times 3, activate main once per turn. If this leader battles your opponent's character during this turn, set this leader as active. Then this leader cannot attack your opponent's characters with a base cost of 7 or less during this turn. This leader has seen a lot of play in Japan through the OP12 format, through their OP12. Don X3 being able to swing into characters, restand, and then either swing into another character if it's higher than that base cost of 7, or go and swing 8000 power into life is very, very oppressive indeed. And especially when you combine that with some of the cards that are in the Zoro package in OP12. You've got things like the Kawina and Zoro's tutor as well that help you be able to get that Don times 3 effect active. You've also got, I believe it's called Luffy Will Become the Pirate King, which is literally just I'm invincible for Roronoa Zoro, restanding the leader and giving the opportunity to have 3 swings. You've also obviously got the Perona 1-cost Searcher and the Dracul Mihawk super rare that's coming in OP12 as well. There's a lot of expectation that is around Zoro and around this deck, but, and it's a big but that we're going to be talking about here, and I'm not just talking about Zoro himself. During my time in Paris, while I was casting the One Piece card game Season 1 Championship Finals, we had the great pleasure of being able to work with and speak to Gavin, who is most known for his work in the One Piece card game Japan broadcasts. And one of the biggest things that he said, even on stream I believe, is that Roronoa Zoro might be a pretty overhyped leader. Because what we're seeing and what he has seen in his experience in Japan is that Zoro has seen a huge, huge level of play and a huge level of representation, but a little bit like Blue Purple Luffy here over in the West, the conversion rate has been nowhere near. There have been very few Zoro decks that have been able to win those high level tournaments. Yes, there have been a couple that have made waves into Top Cut, but just like Blue Purple Luffy here, there have been very few instances of it being a championship winning deck and that the strategy is maybe just a little bit too simplistic. Whether that will carry over here into the West, we know that the West does like to experiment a little bit more and is a little bit more inventive with their deck building choices, especially here in the European region. Is that going to be the same case here with Zoro? I'm not sure. I know one thing for certain, though, is that there will be a lot of people trying to make things work with this deck. And it's why that the Dracul Mihawk, which we'll speak about in the next One Piece card game video, is potentially on the top of my radar to be hit with the ban hammer this weekend to try and slow down that high representation of Roronoa Zoro. That will be a question that will have to be answered this weekend, potentially, with that Kyoto Championship Series event. All we know for certain right now is that Zoro has seen a lot of play in Japan and is likely going to be mirrored here in the West as well. The next one is a very, very interesting one. It's Mono Blue Kuzan, 5,000 power, 5 life again. When a card is trashed by from your hand by your Navy type cards effects, you draw cards equal to the number of cards trashed. This is a really, really interesting one, because over the past few sets and in the history of the One Piece card game, we've seen a couple of instances of blue Navy support being littered around here and there. Now, all of that blue Navy support is culminating in this Kuzan leader, and if there's one thing that that blue package has in common for Navy, for the most part, it is trashing cards out from hand. So this Kuzan leader, I think, could be a potentially slept-on leader. I've got really, really interesting hopes for Kuzan. Of course, you're in mono blue, so you've got access to some really great removal events, things like Hound Blaze and Arma no Murakamo's Sword as potential targets. But there's also, of course, some extra cards that will be coming in OP12 to help support this. I believe that there is the Garp, that is an 8 cost, that is in blue, that is the sort of main event super rare that is going to be engineered for this deck and for this leader. But I'm really, really interested. I've seen a couple of flagship lists in Kuzan that have 1 flagships, but for those who are a little bit out of the loop with the Japan meta and how the Japanese qualification system works over there, flagships happen very, very often, and a lot of weird and wonderful decks win flagships because of how often those events are. You'll get all sorts of players that will be taking part in those events, and there will be some really, really off-the-wall stuff that will do well to qualify you into the next step of the Japanese competitive qualification ladder. So Kuzan, for me, I think is potentially a slept-on leader. I'm really, really hopeful that this deck could work, but it might just be an instance of there's just not enough support and the deck just doesn't quite do enough. Next up, we've got Sanji, which is our first 4-life leader that we're going to be talking about in this video. 5,000 base power, 4 life, because it's blue and purple, and it has 2 effects. First effect is activate main once per turn, Don -1, activate up to 1 Straw Hat Crew type event with a base cost of 3 or less from your hand. The other effect is when attacking, if the number of Don cards on your field is equal to or less than the number on your opponent's field, you ramp a rested Don. So essentially what the idea is here is that you use the activate main effect first to Don -1 and use your Straw Hat event, and then when attacking, you get that Don back and you get it back rested. Sanji's a really, really weird one, in my opinion. It's blue and purple, which at the moment obviously is a great color combination in the game. You get access to things like Gum Gum Giant, like Gear 2. Gear 2 probably a little bit better in this deck than Giant because of that activate main leader ability. You can Don -1, activate the Gear 2, pay the rest to go ahead and ramp, swing in, and then get that Don -1 back. Maybe a little bit more convoluted of an effect to try and use, but that is a potential play you could run. And of course, the fact that it is reliant on events. Now, one of the biggest things for Sanji is that he is getting his own event card, which is one of the 2 manga-style events in, I believe it's pronounced, a Beef Burst, which has multiple different modes that you can activate it in. I'll flash the card up on the screen so you've got the visual representation and reference for it as well. My biggest problem with this deck, as I've said, is that it's in blue-purple. You've already got blue-purple Luffy that's out right now, which is really, really strong. You've also got Reiju in blue-purple, which just does the when attacking effect, but better in its Vinsmoke family package, because when a Don is returned to the Don deck once per turn, you draw a card, and you have ramping effects or returning effects in the deck in the form of the 2-cost Tony Chopper blocker that we search off of a card like 3-drop Porsche. So for me, this is probably the leader, along with the one that we'll probably see next, that is going to see the least amount of play from OP12. I could be wrong. There could be a testing group that could see some really, really great experimentation with this leader and create something that we had not thought of. But for me, this deck is just too weird. It just doesn't really have too much of an identity. Yes, it's got the Event Matters thing, and you've got cards like the Baratier stage and the Reiju Super Rare that's coming in OP12, which gets added cost as long as you've got a certain number of events in the trash. But that can be navigated in the Vinsmoke Reiju deck if you're running things like, I think it's Black Bug, which some Reiju decks are using, Gamma Knife, and the German 66 event search as well. So for me, Sanji's quite low down on my radar, but with any of these leaders that come out in any expansions, we could absolutely be proven wrong. Next up is, unfortunately, probably the one that I think is going to see the least play, but I think is one of the coolest. It's Don Quixote Rocinante. 5,000 power, 4-life leader in green, in purple and yellow. Has 2 effects. Once per turn, if your Trafalgar Law would be KO'd, you may take 1 card from the top of your life to hand instead, so you damage yourself, and then activate main Don -1. The next time you play a Trafalgar Law with the cost of 4 or more from your hand during this turn, the cost would be reduced by 2. So this is a Trafalgar Law tribal deck, which is something that we've not really seen in the One Piece card game, really. We've obviously seen the Vinsmoke family tribal deck that we just spoke about earlier, and we've got the Chopper-style engine that is in a lot of the red aggro decks at the moment, particularly Roronoa Zoro. But I don't think, to my memory, that we've seen a leader specifically ask for certain characters to be in the deck or to engineer themselves in the deck. Black Yellow Luffy, yes, obviously relied on having the 3 brothers for its engine, but I don't remember. In fact, I've got my Dortmund version of the Black Yellow Luffy here. No, it doesn't specify about Luffy, Sabo, or Ace. And in fact, you know what? We're gonna make this just a little bit of an extra little bit of a flex and a little bit of a show off. Have a look at that Borussia Dortmund promo of the Monkey D. Luffy Black Yellow card. Big shout out to Ross, PTCG Radio, or Wassy Plays, for hooking me up with that one there. But this is a first, I think, for the One Piece card game, and thematically is really, really cool. However, that does mean that your deck building scope is very, very limited. Yes, obviously you do have some really good Trafalgar Laws that are in the game at the moment. You're in purple, so you've got access to the 4-cost Law blocker, which can become a 2-cost Law blocker with the effect. There is the 8-cost Super Rare Law that's coming in the OP12 set. You've also obviously got the Secret Rare Yellow Law that is there as well, which can heal you to help facilitate this once per turn protection effect, as well as giving your leader a rested Dom. So there's a couple of different cards that are there, but I don't think that there's enough right now. I think that this deck is too limiting. I think it's forcing you into playing all of these lore cards that don't really have too much synergy between them either in purple and yellow. So I think this is probably going to be the least played. That's not to say that there won't be people trying to try this leader and they'll be trying to experiment and cook with it. Just not 100% sure whether it will deliver that gourmet experience that Rosinante and Trafalgar Law fans were hoping for. I know that there is a player in my local scene who is a really, really big fan of Rosinante and was very disappointed with how this leader turned out and what this leader was when it first got revealed. But as I said with the Kuzan and with the Sanji, the West like to experiment, they like to deck build, and they like to brew some really, really interesting and weird things. Hopefully, that can be the case with Rosinante as well. Last but not least, we've got one of the leaders and the leader that I'm really, really interested in. And that is Black-Yellow Koala. 5,000 power base, 4-life leader with the Dressrosa and Revolutionary Army types. Has the following effects. When this leader attacks your opponent's leader, if you have 2 or more characters with a cost of 8 or more, draw 1 card. Nice. Card advantage. We like that. Once per turn, the effect can be activated when your opponent plays a character with a base cost of 8 or more, or when your opponent plays a character using a character's effect, your opponent takes 1 card from the top of their life to their hand. This is really, really interesting for 2 reasons. Number 1, the format is quite tall at the moment. Particularly if we're looking at, say, Blue-Purple Luffy, that is spitting out a lot of 8 cost or more characters, and they're a 3-life leader. So, in that mid-game, it is pretty likely that this Koala effect is going to trigger and force them to take a damage if they want to start playing those big, tall bodies. With it being based 8 cost or more, it does unfortunately just fall out of the way of something like Secret Rare Trafalgar Law that we were talking about earlier, that's been making a really, really big impact in the format at the moment. But it still hits some pretty good things, and some pretty big things indeed. The second aspect is that other mode in which the once per turn effect can trigger. When your opponent plays a character using a character's effect. And there's a lot of things that are playing out characters using effects at the moment, namely Bello Betty. If Bello Betty manages to escape the banhammer this weekend during the Kyoto Championship Series, which is when we're expecting that ban and restricted list update, Koala could be a really, really good counter to this deck. There's one issue with it. And that is the fact that the life goes into their opponent's hand. Going back and touching on the Bello Betty counterplay that we were hoping for, or we were looking at potentially with Koala, the main way that you beat Bello Betty is by stopping your opponent from taking that damage freely. You want to focus on rested characters on board first. Wait till your Bello Betty player has like 1 or 0 cards in hand, and then start making those huge swings in 1 turn to win the game. Because you are allowing your opponent to take cards from life to their hand here, that's not only extra characters that they can then potentially try and play out to keep the pressure on, that's also more cards that you're giving the Betty player to be able to use for leader effect, because of course they have to trash 1 card from hand to get that 3k boost. So it's a little bit of a double-edged sword here. Yes, it's punishment for using things like the 4 cost or the 5 cost Emporio Ivankovs, but it's not quite the punishment that we were looking for in terms of that card being added to hand. If it was forcing them to trash the life, then it's a completely different story. Then we're looking at a potential immediate tier 1.5, if not tier 1 deck, if Bello Betty stays around in the format. However, with that being added to hand, I think it's still a little bit further behind. I really like the deck, and I really, really like the leader. We haven't even spoken about the fact that you get to draw a card if you have those 2 or more characters with a cost of 8 or more, and you're playing black and yellow, which have some really, really nice top end in a vanilla sense. In yellow, you've got things like the 9-cost Yamato, you've got 8-cost Katakuri, you've got 10-cost Ace as well. In black, you're a little bit more limited. You've got things like 10-cost Kuzan, 8-cost Monkey D. Dragon, which will be coming as a super rare in OP12, which we'll be talking about more in depth in the next One Piece video. But you've got a couple of options there. You're mainly playing this deck for that once per turn free damage ability. I've got a lot of hopes for this deck. I really, really hope that it's going to be good. Black and yellow is a really, really cool color combination. If you couldn't tell before, I'm a little bit biased. So I'm really, really holding out hope for the deck. If you ask me to rate these leaders at face value with the OP12 cards and stuff, I think if we're talking in terms of pure representation, Zoro is at the top of the list. If you're talking about potential in the meta, Zoro, I think, is still going to take that #1 spot, but Rayleigh is a very, very close second. I've seen a lot of good Rayleigh lists in Japan, and they've been converting very, very well. So I think that has got a lot of potential. Third, I think maybe might be Kuzan, because there's a lot of good removal in Navy, and it's just an unconditional filtration tool. This effect isn't once per turn, it's just whenever that card is trashed from hand by your Navy type card effects. So really, really good consistency with the Kuzan. I think Koala then maybe just nestles in behind it at 4th, with that being interchangeable with the Kuzan potentially. This might be more of a meta judgment call. And then probably Sanji and then Rosanante in that order in 5th and 6th. Those are probably the order that I put them in, at least before we get the cards in our hands and we start seeing official tournament results. Obviously, when those OP12 events start happening, that's when things are going to change. And we've got that banned and restricted list that we are expecting at some point during this month. As I've said a couple of times during this video, the most likely time that it's going to happen will be this weekend during the Kyoto Championship Series. And of course, as soon as it happens, we will have a video on the channel reacting to the ban list and seeing what the potential implications are for it. But until that point, that is going to do it for this video. So it's over to you. What leaders are you looking to experiment with and use in the OP12 format? What ones do you think are being put under the radar? And what leaders do you think are maybe a little bit over-exaggerated? While you're down there in the comment section, please go ahead and drop a like rating on the video if you did enjoy it, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more One Piece card game and other TCG related content. As I said earlier on, we'll be having a launch day box opening of OP12, as well as that reaction video to the banned and restricted list update when it goes ahead and drops. That means there's nothing left for me to say apart from thank you so much for watching the video, and until the next time, we'll see you soon. Goodbye for now.